going. I mostly like votes, but I'll record the whole thing. Um, CDOT does not make us report on Title VI, but when we signed our RTD contract about 4 years ago for the 144th Flex Ride, they required us to start doing some Title VI reporting and requirements. They have not held our feet to the fire in terms of really going after plans and reports, although we have kept up with it over the years, kind of inadvertently in the background. Now that we're signing a couple of new RTD contracts this year for a few different things, TDM set aside and a couple of partnership grants, we feel it's time to take a little bit more formal role in a leadership space amongst the TMOs to say, here's our Title IX or Title VI plan, and then we will do annual reporting. So you saw me send out an email for a voice vote, essentially an email vote, that I did get all responses on yeses last month, or I guess it was earlier this month at this time. So we were able to pass it, spruce it up a little bit on the right in terms of how it looks. Danielle and our team did a nice job just sprucing it up a bit, and we were able to get it put on our website. This doesn't mean anything specifically interesting for the board other than we're going to start following these rules, just saying that we're going to start translating our website. We're going to start trying to find board members that are representative of the community in which we serve a little bit more active way, meaning race, gender, age, things like that. And that's pretty much it. I just wanted to let you guys know that I was able to get it kind of passed to be a voice vote on email and then move forward with implementing it on our website. Are there any questions about the Title VI plan and what that means?
Doesn't look like it.
Great. I think just so you know, Chair, Lisa may join a little late. I know they usually have their business advocacy and public policy meeting this morning. So hopefully she'll hop on in a minute and we can get approval. If not, I'll just go back and talk about it and we can do approval next time. But the next thing on the list that doesn't require any kind of a vote is this TDM related legislative update that I just wanted to throw in front of you. I know probably all of you on this call are following the legislature in some way, shape, or form, as am I, both through DRCOG and independently. So I've kind of put up a few bills on the screen here and mostly just wanted to say from a TDM perspective, from Smart Commute's hat on, not necessarily NADA's hat, but just Smart Commute, we're interested in these bills for a number of different reasons. And I'll just run down through the list and just stop me if we have something or we can come back to them at the end. HB 24-1313, this is kind of the local control bill. There's a bunch of transit-oriented community stuff in here. I think you're all familiar with this as the recycled bill that the governor is putting back out there to kind of, after his failed attempt at local control last year around zoning. I think from a TDM perspective, transit-oriented communities is a great idea, but every community is individual, and a mandate across the board is maybe not the best direction. That would be my perspective. The one below it, 24-1366, this is a relatively new bill called Sustainable Local Government Community Planning. This is an interesting one that people seem to be kind of not paying as much attention to, but I care about it from a TDM perspective a lot. This would force local governments to create action plans. It would make CDOT identify growth corridors across the state and kind of re-identify policy barriers to construction that is transit oriented around those growth corridors, a similar vein here, but it would also require local governments and local municipalities within an MPO to create TDM plans every year. And I think there's if something like this ever passes or if that part stays in, there's a clear role for Smart Commute to play here with the communities that we support. I'm talking with DRCOG and their lobbyists, Rich Morrow, about what this means for each one of the TMOs because we're not specifically mentioned in there. And DRCOG didn't seem to know a lot about it when it did get dropped. That's a direct application bill for sure. Kyle, I see you came off. I don't want to keep going.
Carson, how baked is that legislation? I mean, it seems a little fuzzy at this point.
Extremely baked.
Extremely baked.
Well, no,
Well,
not
yeah.
unbaked is what I'm trying. It's not fully formed. Sorry,
Not
I
fully
baked.
formed. Okay. Extremely fuzzy.
I should have thought brownies and not. My brain went to weed and I was thinking fuzzy. I'm sorry, that's embarrassing. Anyway, no, it's not fully formed. I don't think Dr. Cog knows what it means. I was on a call with Ron Papsdorf not long ago, and he was just saying, I don't think anybody quite knows what it means. And in my conversation with Karen yesterday, she had not even heard or been read into this bill from a CDOT perspective on their identification.
DML is also opposing this, Carson, just so you know. We had a big conversation. So the municipal league is opposing because it would require all municipal governments to basically redo their comp plan. And a lot of municipal governments have already done that. And so there's a big lift. So I think what they're asking for amendments would be when you update your comp plan to include sustainability plans, which most everybody is planning to do or is already in the process of doing. But to redo your entire comp plan is a big lift for most. So that's where the amendments are they're trying to seek amendments for that.
And do they know who's anticipated to administer this legislation?
As usual, nobody knows.
Yeah, I don't think it's fully baked yet, Kyle. I think it's CEO is listed, and so is CDOT as the two administering organizations. But again, yet to be seen. And it sounds like amendments are coming in fast and heavy. But the TDM related thing is pretty interesting for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely seems as though if it does gain legs, there's a role that we could play in assisting with this, which could be exciting. There's so much that could be in that specific bill, and I guess we'll stand by as more amendments are.
Isn't it Conservation Colorado and one other activist group is pushing this? Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly kind of activist groups on the left side that are pushing this bill, and I think their primary focus is getting local governments to do climate action plans. I'm just reading further down into it and trying to take a TDM lens, but it might get totally tabled as we near the end of the session. I'll definitely keep you guys updated. I know Lisa just joined. I don't know if they talked about 1366 this morning either.
We did, and we're taking a monitor position. We did hear, I think I heard the end of Jessica's conversation, but Westminster was on, and they're going to be in an amend. There was concern about unfunded mandates pushing back to the local governments.
Yeah.
And to me, potentially from a TDM plan perspective, quite frankly, if we had to write TDM plans for 13 jurisdictions, we would need funding to go along with that and expertise.
I do know Broomfield is supporting this, but they also understand that it's a little bit of a lift for everyone. And so we know there's only 21.7 million that they have in their budget. So if they're going to have unfunded mandates and they have to think about their budget, I'm not sure this will be at the top of their list.
Yep.
Well, I do wonder if this legislation is in any way related to that TDM information that I sent over to you, Carson. That's I guess Audrey at the other group is trying to lead with municipalities in the northwest portion of the Metro District. It seemed like it was coming out of the blue, and then I see this legislation, and I'm like, I wonder if they're related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good question. Just for read everybody in here a little bit. Kyle forwarded me an email from Audrey at Commuting Solutions. They've created a TDM toolkit specifically oriented towards developers and communities in the Northwest region that they serve. There's obvious overlap with us with Westminster and Broomfield and Erie and some others, but I think the plan, Kyle, just so you know, the funding came on that a couple of years ago from a Dr. Cog grant, and they've been working on it for a couple of years. And Wadi may know more than I do, but that's the extent of my understanding. I'm not sure the two are connected, although I think it just speaks to the fact that there's momentum in the TDM space and people seem to kind of be latching onto it right now.
Nathan came off too.
Oh, no.
No.
No, scratched. Listening.
All right. Well, And as you all know, these things are changing by the hour in the legislature, and the closer we get to the end, there will be more changes by the minute.
Yeah, who knows? And I'm not as plugged in as other people just based on this role I'm in, but I try to stay somewhat abreast of what's going on, especially from a smart commute perspective. I'm probably going to go to the hearing on 1366 next week just to listen in and see what they're saying, especially if Dr. Cog, some other TMO EDs, executive directors go from the region.
And 1313 has, we have somebody coming or going from council to testify against that bill. And I think a lot of municipalities are. I think it's this tomorrow actually is when they're having that one.
Yeah, I think that's right. And 1313 is a big fight, right?
And Dr. Cog opposed that as well, already came out in opposition.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I think CML threatened to sue if it goes through. So anyway, there's some interesting stuff there. I'm just going to move us down the list. Those are probably the two kind of quote unquote juiciest spills here in terms of TDM, but the rest of these have some kind of a TDM implication. I want to read through them. SB 24036, Vulnerable Road User Protection Enterprise. This would be a fee on heavier vehicles when you're registering them for safety projects, Vision Zero specifically projects, essentially like bike and ped. I think we're interested in bike and ped projects from a TDM perspective always, but the implementation here seems a little strange with the push for electric vehicles in our state. They seem to be in conflict with each other as electric vehicles are quite heavy, and safety projects being funded by heavy vehicles seems a little bit strange, but I'm not sure where that one will go. But we always like to see more safety projects, but maybe this isn't the best funding stream. House Bill 241304, minimum parking requirements. I know there's been a lot of back and forth here, so chime in if you know anything about amendments on this one, but it would essentially eliminate parking minimums across the board for the region, for each jurisdiction. We always like to see less parking at developments, and I will say that with a caveat that it doesn't work if you don't have alternatives. If you eliminate parking and there's no alternatives for people to try other modes or incentives to do so, or funding to create better transit or biking and walking environments, it just doesn't work. It feels a little bit like an unfunded mandate in that way to me. So I would imagine, I know a lot of people are opposing this bill. And again, it feels like a half-baked TDM measure to me. We're interested in parking minimums, but only in certain contexts where it makes some sense.
Carson, is this a statewide mandate? Or is it, you said regional, I thought. What is this intended to cover?
I see a lot of people came off mute. Somebody else take it. I'm pretty sure it's Denver Metro.
Yeah,
I think so.
so it will basically take away the local governments and within the MPOs abilities to really control parking for any new project. So I actually provided some recommendations to our policy and budget office for the recommendations to city council, and it was either more opposed than amend, but really puts us in a really difficult position because it basically allows the developers to come in and do whatever they want, and you know how that goes. They they develop, they fill their pockets and then they leave, and then that's the problem is left for us to manage. So it's a difficult conversation. But yeah, I basically put the local governments in a tough position because more than likely once those projects come in without the proper parking allocations, then we are left to deal with the consequences of that. So it's really, again, a mandate on the local government from the state level, and we're left to figure out, where to find the resources to deal with that. So it's a tough one, but yeah, it's definitely something that, on our end, we were more than likely recommending to oppose that.
And this is another part of that land use bill that governor brought up last year, just broken down into a separate bill. And so
Exactly.
it impacts businesses, it impacts communities. All of us know we don't have transit that actually supports this kind of zero parking or lack of parking. And so it just hurts all of us that don't have service.
Mhm.
You know, the thing is, for us in particular, we have a lot of projects where, where appropriate, we've approved
Yep.
significant reductions. We build projects with, one, 1.0 ratios for, units where it works, and we've made it work. So it's like, why don't let the local governments make those decisions? There's also the component of these, parking studies that we were also gonna have to do. It's just, yeah, we put the, all the responsibility on us to deal with the consequences of these, mandate that's going to be imposed in the local governments.
I'll tell you, from my perspective, being a developer, we are concerned actually with this as well, because working in Broomfields, there is such among some of the council members, such an aversion to parking that it's almost as though we don't want any of it. And you guys figure out what we need the parking, our tenants need the parking. And I think what we're all hopefully after is a balance between, no, we don't want to overpark. And historically, that is what, let's face it, municipalities have required, is an overparking. We're worried that the pendulum could be swinging too far in the other direction to significantly underparking, and Waddy doing some of the very things that your municipality is concerned about. And we're concerned about not being able to service our tenants appropriately. So it does seem as though something that the pendulum swinging too far, and we need something that is a bit more measured in the approach, and that does account for the unique circumstances of each development. So I had no idea that this was being considered, but I
Yeah,
have
I mean, and the
concerns.
only other thing I was gonna say is, projects where it's like significantly reduced, more than likely those projects are not going to get financed anyways, because the banks are not going to sign off on projects that are not going to have appropriate parking anyways. So that's like
right.
the only thing that's in the back of my mind, like worst case scenario, it's not going to happen. They can mandate it all they want. If it doesn't make sense financially, it's not going to get
It
financed.
won't get
So
built.
yeah,
You're right.
no, it won't. It won't.
Right.
And there's less housing, so
And there's
Yeah,
less housing.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm in Kyle's corner on this. It seems like the private market should dictate a little bit more of what these requirements are, right? And on one hand, the project's not going to be feasible if the lenders see that the parking is too low, right? And so the housing doesn't get built. But at the same time, there's been projects that haven't been built because the parking is too high. So I personally, I don't know if I see this as much as a TDM transportation bill necessarily than a housing bill, right? And I think the policy intent behind this is there are housing projects that could have a lot more deeper affordability and more supply were it not parking requirements. But from just a public policy perspective, in my opinion, I think the free market would dictate what those requirements are. I'll put back my unpopular hat on for the rest of this conversation.
I haven't heard of anybody supporting this in municipal government, because again, it takes away local control, and it's just another of the governor's bills from last year is recycled into a new bill. And we all know that, so.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this conversation in context. I agree that at the end of the day, it's probably a housing bill more than anything. I think the reason it has a TDM lens and why it's so frustrating is I feel like parking minimums is one of the tools in our toolkit as TDM practitioners. And when it's implemented in this way, it makes us look bad. Because when we approach someone and say, we are interested in, recommending limiting your parking or not over parking to a jurisdiction, like in Audrey's plan, that's included in there. When a bill like this drops, it makes us all look bad because it's because of the heavy hand from the governor's office. So it's frustrating.
I don't want to talk about Front Range passenger rail. I hate that thing. Whole thing
Yeah.
sucks. It's ridiculous. I'm gonna get a
I-
big sign when that day comes for the taxing, that I'm gonna be on a big hill somewhere with the sign waving, no, vote no.
I love trains, but I might agree with you here. It feels not great. The last two are a little loaded. I think the RTD governance bill that hasn't dropped, this idea that they're going to move the RTD bill to a smaller, appointed, not elected board, with some front range passenger rail implications there. This, and then the bill below it, 1012, there's some kind of underwriting here that essentially says we should create a governance structure that allows for front range passenger rail to have free will and be able to go after as many funding pots as they see fit across the state. And this opens the door for some of those opportunities, and then a potential ballot decision down the road. Both of these bills go hand in hand, in my opinion. It's pulling away the ability for people to say no to something like front range passenger rail as much as the funding might be there, and laying a path for the governor to essentially railroad us into something like this. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I should have paused the recording there. That was a pretty strong opinion, but that's where I stand on it.
Like the
So-
fun of railroading, but
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah,
Trains
intentional.
that's a playbook out of Senator Fenberg's speeches lately. Because the bill that we just took a position on is actually Senate Bill 184. And that's really more of the funding around front range passenger rail, including the rental fee growth or addition to add more an additional fee to rental cars to generate a lot more of that pot of money.
Cause those aren't high enough. Are you kidding
Right.
me?
No, actually,
Yeah.
well, interestingly, I just had a conversation. We actually are below normal on rental fees compared to other metropolitan areas. So, but the airport is also going to look at raising the fee on rental cars for building of the consolidated rental facility that they're contemplating for Den. SB 184, though, there's quite a few things. We had Troy talking about RTD's view on it. They did take in a position of amend last night. HB 1012, we were monitoring, and it's actually gone through both chambers. So that engine has left the station. You want me to bring more railroad things into that? So that bill's
I
already
love it.
on its way. There were several amendments, and I was just looking to see. I didn't catch up with all of those, but the one that's actually the governance bill still hasn't dropped. So we're going to watch that closely, because again, I think your points are well taken, Carson. So we did have Senator Priola on our call this morning, and he is actually also very strongly against a lot of what front range passenger rail is doing. We had front range passenger rail present to Development Council on Monday. They really hedged about when I brought up and I said, this doesn't touch Adams County. Tell me why this is a good thing for Adams County and why we should support this. Andy Carson, the general manager, said, well, the route between Union Station and Boulder, which will run on concurrent tracks that could in the future also perhaps maybe have a stop somewhere, perhaps soon. It was total hedging, but in somewhere that would be beneficial to Adams County. But I think this is something that AC Rep's going to really monitor and figure out how we can voice our concerns around this as well.
Yeah, the same day that the end line gets finished is when those other stops will maybe happen.
Yeah,
I
right.
think that's the conversation at NADA, and I think it'll get more interesting this summer as they get out of session and some things clarify around all these various bills. Again, obviously, I didn't put some on here, some intentionally, some because I just am not as close to it as other people here. But I think this has been a helpful conversation. Is there anything else before I move us around a little bit?
No,
I do have one other comment. I thought I heard you say, Carson, and maybe I misheard something about whether or not it is funded. I mean, do we have a price tag? And I'm sure it's wrong for front range passenger rail. And what are the mechanisms aside from levying an increased fee on, your rental cars, which I can't imagine is going to go anywhere close to paying for the price tag.
No, we don't have a price tag, and someone on AC Reps call on Development Council, I can't remember who, asked for the general price tag. They don't have one because they haven't done a full service development plan yet, and they don't know what that cost is. So going to a voter without a full service development plan seems crazy to me. I think the other funding mechanisms here are federally and Amtrak related. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's a lot of federal money that they've already received to kind of slot them into a position to move forward. And it's a really tight turnaround on some of those federal dollars. It's like a 4-year, 2 or 4 year turnaround if they want to be able to utilize like $500 million. So I think that's part of the reason why the governor is pushing so hard to get some of this done. But it feels, I'll keep the analogy going, half-baked when you go to a voter without a service development plan, and quite frankly, skipping over all the communities along the Northwest Rail line, Broomfield and Westminster and all these communities, going straight from Denver to Boulder with a line. It's not Northwest Rail anymore. That's a totally different rail line that I think we need to have a big conversation about, both at NADA and I'm sure Northwest mayors and commissioners.
And I don't mean to belabor this, but it is important. Is the $500 million of federal funding, is that the tail that's wagging this dog? And if so, is it specifically mandated to be used for rail, or is it more generically available for transportation projects? And the governor has decided it should go to rail.
It's only for specific intercity rail, Kyle. It has to be between major metropolitan area to major metropolitan area. That's why they're trying to start it in the way that they are: Denver, Boulder, Longmont, Fort Collins, and maybe even skipping over Longmont potentially. I have a deck that I can send you from them, and I'm sure Lisa does too, that can detail a little bit of this. And I think their deck's actually pretty good. I'll send that to you today just so you have it.
Will you send it to all of us?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you should send
I'll
it to
send it
all
to
of us.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yep.
Except
I'm
they
just gonna make
noticed,
one more.
they
Sorry.
noticeably left out all the dates on their timeline, Carson, which
What?
was
Of
really
course they did.
interesting.
They haven't
I mean-
done any environmental, no service planning. It's crazy. I mean, the idea is there, but it's not there.
Yeah. There's only about 2
Right.
billion left. There was 12 billion
Oh.
allocated from the feds for more rail in the US. There's only about 2 billion left in that pot to be allocated across the whole country for more rail, from what I discussed with somebody on Monday during this presentation. So it's
Yeah.
going to cost a lot more than that. And they've been talking to BNSF, but when I asked about rail south of Denver, UP's not on the same track as the rest of them.
You could help yourself.
Nice.
Oh my god!
Well done.
What in the world?
So I don't
My
think it's
last
ever going to
snarky
happen.
comment will no.
So I just say, so it sounds to me like this is a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. And I think about the expenditure of $500 million. And when you think about the cost per passenger served and alternative transportation methods like the BRT, which already exists, it's just, it just seems so misguided, and it's unfortunate that anyway, just.
Oh. And you'll need a rental car at any one of those stops because there is no other
Yeah.
transit. So that's
how you
know.
Oh, that's depressing.
I
but
love
true.
that, Jessica.
Oh,
All right, I'm
That's
gonna
ridiculous.
move us if I
Yeah.
can.
Sorry.
yeah, please do.
Since we have a
All right.
quorum on the call, I'm gonna move us back to the very beginning and go through the first 2 items.
So let's go to the approval of February minutes. If there aren't any questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right. If no discussion, all in favor say yes.
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 Yes,
Any opposed say no. All right, February minutes are approved. Moving on to the March treasurer's report.
All right, can you guys see this okay?
Yep.
Well, there's some numbers on the screen. I want to make sure it's not too tiny. So we always do the previous month. Back on February the 1st, we opened our checking account with $27,774.90, a pretty healthy balance. That's around what we like to have every month, around between $20,000 and $30,000 in that account. But as you know, there's been some cash flow issues, and CDOT and RTD have been pretty slow paying us some money, which is not that unusual this time of year as we wait for the large sums to come in from NADA and Adams County. So our deposits back that month were pretty healthy. We had a couple of memberships come in, Northwest Parkway, FHU. There's been a few more since then in the month of March that are not shown here. CO7, this is Tammy's contract with their marketing team, sent us invoice payment for 3 combined months. They were so far behind. They sent us October, November, and December all at once. Not a ton of money, but it was $1,300 for her hard work on that project. This Catherine payroll issue return, we had an issue with our Gusto system where it paid her $790 too much because of an error on my end. I typed a number in wrong, human error. She has sent me a check back for $790 to recover that funds. It was the easiest way to do clean accounting, and that's what CDOT requested that I do. So we did that back in February, and all is good and clean there. We received one final 144 Flex Ride final payment for Jean's time. That was $4,022 back in February. That account is fully closed out until I write the local match check for $60,000, probably mid this year. CDOT TMO support grant paid us for our time October through December. That was around $4,000 for that, totaling our deposits for the month of $13,987. Our debits for the month look a little high, but that's because of the last item here. They're really about normal for us for a month. Our salaries were about $16,000. That's right in line with the normal monthly amount. IRS withholdings were right around that $5,500 number. Subscription services, we pay for MailChimp every month, $54. Insurance, had to pay $147 for one of our policies. Mileage reimbursement, a little bit more here because we had a quarterly payment of $154.27. Same with phone reimbursement. We reimburse our staff $40 a month to use Google Voice on their phones. That was $160. The storage unit, we had to pay $109. This was our annual recurring fee along with our monthly fee of $89, so it totaled $109. We paid $55 for NADA coffee back then. We brought in some Starbucks, and then this return cash flow, I had to cash flow some money in back in January to make payroll. I returned that $15,000 to our savings account and ended our balance with $1,752.47 back on February the 29th. Our current checking balance as of this morning was $60,291.11, quite a bit higher than that $1,700 number. That's because we've received a few payments in. Since then, our current savings balance is $33,906.09. That's pretty healthy. I need that number to be around $60,000 when I write the check to RTD to close out our local match for the grant on that end. We're well on track to do that. And when they do send me the invoice, I will have 90 days to pay that. So I'll have 3 months to make sure I get all the payments in. But again, we're well on track to make that happen. The current outstanding invoices you see are still pretty high. That's pretty normal for the first quarter of a year, $144,000 roughly. There's the $11,000 we're looking for in terms of Flex Ride local match to kind of bring us up to a higher number. And then we'll use some of the membership money, the $34,750, to also augment that to get us up to over that $60,000 number when that invoice comes in. We're still out a CMAQ payment back in September. I had a call with CDOT last week. They said, I asked them if I was crazy and had missed a payment coming in and I had an accounting error on my end. They said, no, we had someone leave in September and we have about 15 missed invoices from the month of September that are still out there, which is incredibly disappointing and gives you some insight into the situation that's going on at CDOT's back office right now. I've been promised that's going to come through any day now. The Adams County CMAQ local match for the year, they match our large CMAQ grant. The 20% is almost $30,000 this year, $29,945. NADA dues for the year have not quite come in. I have 2 communities that have not sent their dues in yet. That's 28,500. And then a litany of various invoices to CDOT for January and February for a number of different grants down at the bottom there, totaling 8,000, 4,000, 9,000, 4,000. That's for our staff time on various grants, but they're running roughly 2 or 3 months behind on those. I think that's it for the treasurer's report. Are there any questions?
Nope.
Okay.
So with that, I would entertain a motion to accept the March treasurer's report.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed say no. All right, March treasurer's report has been approved and accepted. So let's move down to summer outreach.
Yeah, thanks. These last couple of items are a little bit shorter since I know we're running slow on time. Thanks to Danielle and the team who helped me kind of put this together. She's been helping run our summer outreach program for the last, I guess will be her 2nd year doing so. Just helping get us organized a little bit as we're a pretty limited staff around as many events as we can possibly do. I just wanted to bring this up for you guys to look at the number of outreach events that we're trying to do this year. And then remind you that at a previous meeting, we had said there was some interest from some of the board members to potentially attend some meetings, attend some of these outreach events and help us table. When we get to the point where we feel comfortable with the scheduling, we'll send out a doodle poll or probably a Google form. It's a little bit easier for everybody to potentially sign up to do that. We will not ask you to come to all of these, but maybe one for a couple of hours. The program is interesting here, and I'll just run down through it. We're going to start off with Broomfield's Earth Day event in, I guess, in about a month here in late April. Hopefully the weather's good. You never know in late April how it might be. Then we're going to do a welcome home baseline event. We had a great lunch with their team. I guess that was last week, and they're introducing this year, and would like to have us there to talk to people that are new residents about the opportunities in the area and what's to come on Colorado 7 in the future. And then Thornton Fest, Baselines Take to the Trail event on the June the 8th. I think we're actually going to do a Firestone Resource Fair also on June the 8th. That came in last night after I did these slides. The Thornton Bike Rodeo, we've done this every year with the police department. We'll do that on June the 22nd. And then Bike to Work Day, we're going to try to do 4 stations again this year, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. That's Wednesday, June the 26th this year. Brighton's Full Moon Bike Rides, we like to get out to at least one of these a year. It's a great community event and a nice way to encourage multi-generational biking in Brighton and explore some of the trails in the area. We'll do that on July the 21st. Baseline's Honeybee Fest, this was a pretty good success last year. We ran a bike like valet station for people that wanted to bike. We parked and watched their bikes while they went around. We'll probably do that again this year. Harvest Fest, and then we're going to try to do some Northglenn neighborhood events this year as opposed to going to some of their larger scale events. Really talk to residents about what's in their area with council members as they're out there in those neighborhood events. So those are our main summer outreach ideas. Here's the 4 Bike to Work Day stations we're probably going to try to do this year. These are not 100% locked in. But we like to continue doing the Adams County Confluence Breakfast Station. This is really the largest station we help support because of its location. We get 300-400 riders a year there. Love to partner with some of you guys on that station, specifically maybe you, Lisa. I think in the past there's been some partnership there, so we can talk about that. Northglenn EB Rains Breakfast Station, we've done this for a number of years, and Catherine on our team kind of knows that better than anybody as a local Northglenn resident for a long time. And then in the afternoon, these are 2 new stations we did last year, but we'd like to continue them this year, and we're going to and pump them up and make them more interesting. The Baseline Bike Party afternoon station and a Denver Premium Outlets afternoon station. We learned some lessons last year around both of these, how to kind of encourage ridership, location, things like that. And then on the right-hand side, this is the logo this year. I think it's relatively cute. The smiley face creeps me out just a little bit. But it's a nice logo we can slap on things, and we'll send it around to a bunch of different people. You'll be seeing lots and lots of Bike to Work Day stuff as we try to utilize it as a nice momentum building event for us like we do every year. Any questions about summer outreach and or bike to work days? We started off.
A question, actually more of a comment, since we just did 2 events recently with Maker Housing. I'm wondering, what kind of outreach do you do to those communities? Because it seems like a lot of folks in Maker Housing might be good applicants for the e-bike lending or things like that. And
Yeah,
especially
it's a good.
Crossing Point, sorry, is in walking distance to the Thornton station there.
Yeah, it's a good question, Lisa. We work closely with Maker Housing and their staff. We've actually had 3 applicants that are deployed in our e-bike program from their team right now. We've talked to them about doing kind of resource fairs and things like that, but this is terrible. But quite frankly, we don't have any ESL speakers on our staff, any Spanish speakers even, that could go out there and interact in a really healthy way. We would need one of their team there to help us translate. It becomes challenging, and I want to make sure that when we're out there, we're meeting people where they're at, since they're in those situations. That's my short answer to a long response.
There might be an opportunity for that at there's a new community health center opening at the Alto building later this year, partnership with Kids First. And between those 2 organizations, they have plenty of dual language speakers. So maybe that would be an event that I know they're trying to make it a big event. So that might be a time that you guys could come out there and be a part of that. I think the other thing to keep in mind is that there has been some concern about e-bikes in the apartments just due to fires. And so I have a Maker Housing meeting this afternoon, actually. I just want to find out from Peter how many other situations that we've had with fires or something like that related to e-bikes, because I think there was a pretty significant issue with that not too long ago.
Yeah, you're spot on. The fire issue is becoming more and more evident as the market gets saturated. I think our approach is to have people disconnect the battery and not charge it when you're not there. Don't leave it plugged in. And then also, we're interested in deploying some of our e-bike mobility hubs, potentially at Maker Housing locations, to give people a safe place to park outside so that they're not having their bike stolen. I mean, we had an individual that was in a Maker Housing facility that it was chained to a staircase, a metal staircase, and someone brought a reciprocating saw in and cut the staircase off to steal the bike.
Oh my gosh.
And that was not the first time we've heard that. So these things are extremely valuable, and we understand that flaunting a $3,500 e-bike in a low-income housing situation presents its own challenges. So we're trying to really learn some lessons and support the whole biking element, and that is increasingly challenging. Anyway, that's my crazy story.
We'll just look for the calendar invites on the other items when you have them all finalized.
I will. Thanks for being willing to do that. I don't have too much left. I know Danielle and Tammy are on the call, and I've talked to them about this before, but I'm just going to politely ask them to leave while I talk about our annual staff compensation discussion. They can log off, just so it's not uncomfortable for them. But I just wanted to talk to you all about some of these items. So I'll wait for them to hop off, and then we'll get into that.
All right.
All right.